Look at your wallet right now. That card, that paper bill. It's worth nothing on its own. No gold, no metal, no value. It works because everyone agrees it does. The second people stop believing, it's trash. Sounds fragile, right? Modern, even. But this trick is ancient. Really ancient. Long before coins. Long before writing. Long before cities existed at all. Humans were already playing this exact game. Not with paper, with shells, with stone, with animals, with red pigment from the earth. And it worked for tens of thousands of years. Today, we're going back to the first money, long before anyone minted a single coin. Picture a hunter-gatherer camp 50,000 years ago. No banks, no coins, no cash registers. Yet trade was already happening, constantly. Someone traded meat for tools. Someone traded shells for red pigment. Someone traded a favor for a future favor. This is the world before money as we know it. But it's not the world before value. Because value, humans invented that first. Stick around because this goes back further than you'd guess. Way further. So here's the real question. If there were no coins, what counted as money? What did ancient humans actually trust as valuable? And why did total strangers, hundreds of miles apart, trust the same objects? That's not a small thing. Trust across distance, across tribes, across generations. That's the real foundation money is built on. Not metal, not paper, trust. And ancient humans figured that out, shockingly early. Start with obsidian, volcanic glass, black and sharp. Sharper than steel, actually, when freshly broken. One single source, a volcano, far away. But archaeologists find its blades hundreds of miles from that volcano. Some pieces traveled over 500 miles. On foot, no roads, no wheels, no carts. Just human hands, passing it along, hand to hand. That's not an accident. That's a trade network, a prehistoric supply chain, thousands of years before writing. Someone in this valley never saw that volcano, but they still had a piece of it, because somebody nearby traded for it, and that person traded with someone else. Chain after chain after chain. This is how value moved before money existed, not through banks, through relationships. Archaeologist Colin Renfrew mapped these obsidian routes in the 1960s. He called it down-the-line trade. Not one big trip, many small trades stacked together. Each trader only knew their nearest neighbor. Nobody saw the whole network, but the network existed anyway. That's wild if you think about it. A trade system with no single person in charge, no CEO, no central bank, no map. Just trust, repeated over and over for centuries. Picture this exact moment, 30,000 years ago. Two strangers meet at the edge of a river valley. Neither speaks the other's language. One carries a pouch of sharp obsidian blades. The other carries strings of pale, polished shells. They sit. They look at each other's goods. No prices, no haggling in words, just gestures and eye contact. A blade is set down. A handful of shells is set beside it. A nod, an exchange. Done. No paperwork, no receipt, no third party watching. Just two people deciding together what was fair. That handshake moment, repeated millions of times, built the first economies. Long before anyone wrote the word trade down. Now picture the coast, thousands of miles from any mountain. Here, the valuable object isn't stone. It's a shell. A small, glossy, cream-colored shell called cowrie. It looks almost like a tiny polished tooth. And people wanted it. Badly. Cowrie shells traveled from the Indian Ocean all the way into inland Africa, into Asia, into the Pacific, thousands of miles from the beaches where they were collected. Why? Because they were rare where people needed them. Hard to fake, easy to carry, easy to count. That's basically the definition of good money. Rare, portable, durable, recognizable. Cowries checked every single box. In parts of Africa, they were still used as currency as late as the 19th century. Not prehistoric, not ancient, basically modern history. One shell doing the job of money for thousands of years. Now go back even further, before shells, before obsidian trade. Red ochre, a pigment made from iron-rich earth. Humans were using it over 100,000 years ago. Some of the oldest evidence of symbolic behavior comes from ochre. But here's the part that matters for money. Ochre wasn't always local. Sometimes it traveled. Certain deposits were better, more vivid, more valuable, and people carried those better sources far from where they were dug. That means someone valued it enough to trade for it, not just use it, trade for it. Ochre may be one of the earliest valuable objects humans ever exchanged. Long before shells, long before coins, before most of what we'd call civilization even existed. Now, fast forward into the world of early farming. Cattle, sheep, and goats enter the picture, and they become something more than food. They become a way to measure wealth. How rich was a family? Count their herd. This idea ran so deep it shaped language itself. The Latin word for cattle is pecus. The Latin word for money? Pecunia. Same root, same idea. Even the English word capital traces back to caput, meaning head, as in head of cattle. We still use cattle-based words for money today, without even realizing where they came from. A herd of goats wasn't just dinner, it was a bank account with legs. Salt deserves its own place in this story too. Not just a seasoning, a survival tool, and a valuable trade good. Long before refrigeration, salt was how you preserved meat and fish. That made it seriously valuable, almost anywhere it was scarce. Roman soldiers were sometimes paid partly in salt. That's actually where the word salary comes from the Latin word for salt, sol, a word we still use for our paycheck, every single month. Another everyday word, quietly proving how old this all is. Salt roads crisscrossed ancient Europe, Africa, and Asia. Entire trade networks existed just to move this one mineral around. Not because it was rare everywhere, because it was rare somewhere. And scarcity, paired with real usefulness, is basically the recipe for money. But here's something people usually get wrong about all this. They imagine cavemen literally swapping fish for baskets, one for one. I'll trade you 3 fish for 1 basket, right on the spot. That image is everywhere. Cartoons, textbooks, even museums. But anthropologists who actually studied small-scale societies found something different. Simple, direct, stranger-to-stranger barter was actually rare. What was common instead? Debt, memory, obligation. You give me meat today, I owe you something. Not right now, someday. No exchange, no haggling. Just an unspoken I owe you. That I owe you lived in memory, in relationships, in reputation. That's not less sophisticated than money. In some ways, it's more sophisticated. It required trust that could last for years. Trust across an entire lifetime sometimes. Take a second and really sit with that idea. Someone, thousands of years before your ancestors had a written language, was already extending trust to a total stranger, betting that a stranger 100 miles away would honor the deal. No court to enforce it, no app to rate them afterward. Just a bet on human decency, repeated constantly. And it mostly worked. That's kind of remarkable when you actually stop and think about it. Anthropologist David Graeber studied exactly this, centuries of it. His conclusion? The barter economy we imagine mostly never existed. What existed instead was something closer to a gift economy. Give when you can, receive when you need. Track it all socially, not numerically. No coins required, no prices written down, just people remembering who helped who. That's a currency too, just not one you can hold. And when someone broke that trust, consequences followed. Reputation could collapse. Trade partners could vanish. The stakes were just as real as unpaid debt today. So really, ancient humans invented credit before they invented cash. All of this, obsidian, shells, ochre, cattle, favors, debts, none of it needed a government to work. None of it needed a mint, a bank, or a treasury. It just needed people who trusted each other enough to wait. Quick reminder of where we're headed. We're not just listing old objects people liked. We're tracing the exact moment humans invented shared value. And it's about to get even older than you think. Here's the twist most people never expect. We usually assume money needs civilization first. Cities, governments, writing, farming, all of it before money. But the evidence says the opposite. Long-distance trade goes back at least 40,000 years. That's deep into the Upper Paleolithic, tens of thousands of years before the first city ever existed, before the first farm, before the first written word. Hunter-gatherers, nomads with no permanent home, were already trading across huge distances. They didn't need agriculture to invent value. They didn't need writing to track debts. They didn't need kings to enforce trust. They built it from nothing but memory and relationships. Think about what that actually means. Money-like behavior might be older than farming itself, older than the wheel, older than pottery in some regions. It might be one of the oldest human inventions, period. Not a byproduct of civilization, a building block of it. Here's a detail that might blow the timeline open even further. Some evidence suggests material transport wasn't unique to our species. Neanderthal sites have produced stone tools moved tens of miles from their source. Not as far as Homo sapiens networks, but still farther than local. If that holds up, exchange-like behavior might predate modern humans entirely. It might be older than our species itself, which would make trust and trade a very deep part of being human. Not something we invented, something we inherited. Let's jump forward to the Copper Age for a second. Around 5,300 years ago, a man died in the Alps. We call him Ötzi, the Iceman. His body was found frozen, preserved almost perfectly, and his gear told a story. A copper axe, flint from far away, materials from multiple regions. None of it was local to where he died. That means networks of exchange stretched across huge parts of Europe. Even in a world without coins, without writing, without cities nearby. A single frozen body proved trade networks existed quietly for centuries. He wasn't rare, he was ordinary. That's the scary part. If an ordinary traveler carried goods from multiple regions, imagine how much exchange was happening we'll never find evidence of. So the real twist isn't just money is old. It's that trust-based exchange might be as old as humanity itself, maybe as old as language, maybe older than farming. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If ancient humans built all this without governments, why do we assume we need one to trust each other today? Let's get specific about numbers, because they're wild. Actual coins, metal, stamped, standardized, first appear around 600 BCE in the Kingdom of Lydia in modern-day Turkey, made from electrum, a natural mix of gold and silver. 600 BCE. Write that number down. Now compare it to Obsidian trade networks, 40,000 years old. That's not a small gap. That's over 39,000 years. Coins are almost a footnote in the story of money, a recent footnote compared to everything before it. For over 97% of human trading history, there were no coins at all. None. Zero. Just shells, stone, cattle, and trust. Even before Lydia's coins, Mesopotamia had something close to money. Around 3000 BCE, temples and palaces used the shekel, not a coin, a unit of weight, usually in silver or barley. Merchants and scribes recorded debts in shekels on clay tablets. That's right, some of the very first writing was basically bookkeeping. Numbers, names, and debts pressed into wet clay with a stylus. Money and writing may have grown up together, side by side, one helping track the other from the very beginning. So the story isn't just writing came, then money came. In Mesopotamia, they practically arrived hand in hand. Let's go deeper on cowrie shells specifically. Scientists can trace their origin using shell structure and species. Most trade cowries came from the Indian Ocean, especially the Maldives. From there, they moved along trade routes into Africa and Asia. In parts of West Africa, cowries functioned as real currency, used to pay taxes, buy goods, even pay wages. This lasted for centuries, well into colonial-era trade. In China, cowrie shells were so tied to wealth that the character for money still contains a cowrie shape today. That symbol traces back to a drawing of a shell. Thousands of years later, it's still baked into the language. A shell became a symbol so powerful, it outlived the shell itself. Back to obsidian for a second, because the science here is wild too. Every obsidian source has a unique chemical fingerprint. Trace elements laid down by that specific volcano millions of years ago. Using a method called X-ray fluorescence, scientists match a blade to the exact mountain it came from. That's how we know some blades traveled over 500 miles. Not guesswork, not legend, measurable chemical proof. Archaeologist Colin Renfrew formalized this kind of analysis in the 1960s. His fall-off model showed obsidian got rarer the farther from the source. Exactly what you'd expect from trade passing hand to hand. Each trade added distance and lost a little material along the way. A quiet physical fingerprint left by an economy with no records. Stone tools didn't just appear randomly either. Some flint was so good, people mined it directly, not just found it. Grimes Graves in England has Neolithic flint mine shafts, dug by hand. Deep pits, some over 30 feet down, chased a single vein of flint. That's a serious investment of labor for one specific material. Flint from those mines has been found far beyond where it was dug, which means people weren't just collecting stone. They were producing a trade good, on purpose, at scale, for exchange. That's basically an ancient factory built entirely around value creation. Ochre research goes back to sites like Blombos Cave in South Africa. Evidence there shows ochre processing over 100,000 years ago. Some researchers argue this marks early symbolic thinking in humans. Symbolic thinking is the exact same skill money depends on. Because money is symbolic. A shell isn't food. A coin isn't shelter. Their value exists only in shared belief. The moment humans could think symbolically, the seeds of money were planted, long before anyone called it money at all. Let's talk about one more material, amber. Fossilized tree resin, warm gold in color, light enough to carry far. Baltic amber, from the shores of northern Europe, is especially famous. Archaeologists have found Baltic amber in graves, in Greece, in Egypt, thousands of miles from where it actually formed. That means Bronze Age trade routes stretched across almost the entire continent. Amber for bronze, amber for gold, amber for status. A lightweight, beautiful material became its own long-distance currency, not because anyone needed it to survive, but because everyone agreed it was worth wanting. Which, honestly, sounds a lot like luxury goods today. French anthropologist Marcel Mauss studied gift economies in the early 1900s. His research on Pacific Island societies showed gifts create binding obligations. A gift isn't free. It creates a debt, even if unspoken. That debt holds a society together, almost like an invisible currency. Decades later, anthropologist David Graeber expanded this idea. His 2011 book, Debt, The First 5,000 Years, challenged the standard story. He argued coined money often followed debt, not the other way around. Debt and trust came first. Coins came later, mostly to formalize it. That flips the textbook version of economic history on its head. So let's zoom out and count what we actually have. Obsidian trade, at least 40,000 years old. Ochre exchange, potentially over 100,000 years old. Cowrie shell currency, used for thousands of years, into the 1900s. Cattle-based wealth, still echoed in our language today. Coins, barely 2,600 years old. Paper money, even younger, only about 1,000 years old, first in China. Digital money, the stuff in your banking app, decades old. That's it. Compared to the full story, digital money is a blink, a rounding error at the very end of a much longer timeline. This pattern isn't limited to one region either. In North America, indigenous nations used wampum, shell beads woven into belts. Wampum recorded agreements, treaties, and trade, not just decoration. In the Pacific islands of Yap, communities used giant carved stone discs. Some of those stones weighed literally tons, too heavy to move. Ownership just changed, by agreement. The stone itself never moved. Everyone remembered who owned which stone. That was enough. That's money existing almost entirely as a shared idea. No physical exchange required at all, just consensus. Which, honestly, isn't that far from a bank transfer today. You don't move gold across a counter anymore either. You just update a number everyone agrees is true. Fast forward to right now, and the pattern hasn't stopped. Cryptocurrency runs on the exact same core idea, just with new tools. No shells, no coins, just code, and a network of strangers agreeing it's real. Bitcoin has no government behind it, no central bank, just distributed trust, verified by computers instead of memory. It sounds futuristic, but structurally, it's almost identical to a shell network, value with no built-in use held up entirely by shared belief. Cowries all over again, just running on servers instead of shorelines. So back to that wallet, that banking app on your phone. It feels new, digital, disconnected from anything ancient, but it's running on the exact same operating system, an operating system humans built tens of thousands of years ago. Shared belief, portable symbols, trust across distance. Cowrie shells worked because everyone agreed they mattered. Your paycheck works for the exact same reason. Nothing more, nothing less. Just agreement, repeated at scale. The materials changed, shells to coins to paper to pixels. The core idea never changed at all. Every time you tap a card, you're doing what a trader did, handing obsidian to a stranger 40,000 years ago, trusting a system bigger than any one person could ever see. That's not a small inheritance. That's one of the oldest habits we have. Older than cities, older than writing, older than farming. Value, built entirely out of trust, might be one of the oldest human technologies there is. And it explains something else, too. Why money still feels emotional, not just practical. Because for most of human history, trading wasn't a transaction. It was a relationship, a bond, a memory between two people. We've compressed all of that into a tap, a swipe, a number. But the instinct underneath it is exactly the same as it always was. We want proof that we can trust each other. We just used to carry that proof in our hands. A shell, a stone axe, a red pigment carried for miles. Now we carry it in a chip or a string of code. Different shape, same very old idea. Let's go back to where we started. Look at that wallet again, that app on your screen. It's not just plastic, not just pixels. It's the newest version of a system older than civilization itself. A system built by hunter-gatherers who never met a coin, by traders who carried obsidian hundreds of miles on foot, by people who wore shells from an ocean they'd never seen, by families who counted their wealth in cattle, not currency. None of them needed a bank. They needed each other. That's the actual first money. Not metal, not paper. Trust, carried by hand, generation after generation. And somehow, it never stopped working. So next time you tap your card without thinking twice, remember you're part of the oldest trade network humans ever built. One that started before cities, before writing, before farms. One shell, one stone, one favor at a time. Every economy you've ever used is standing on top of this. Every price tag, every invoice, every bank transfer. All of it traces back to two strangers and a shared decision to trust. That's the real first money, not the shell, not the coin. The decision made over and over to believe each other. If you liked digging into where our habits actually come from, hit subscribe. New videos on ancient humans go up all the time. And this one's just the beginning of the story.